Chapter 1, Understanding Ethics. Ethics is about how we meet the challenge of doing the right thing when that will cost more than we want to pay. And this quote comes from the Josephson Institute of Ethics. What do you think this means? Are keeping to one's ethics ever really easy? Let's take an example. If you are flagging down a cab and getting into a cab, and on the back seat is a bag of money, what are you going to do? If the driver doesn't know that it's there, are you just going to take it? Are you going to turn it over to the driver? Who does it belong to? Are you going to be able to find the previous taxi rider? So the temptation is there to keep this bag of money. The cost, as referenced here, is what we're giving up by doing the right thing. In other words, if there's $50,000 in that bag of money, the cost to do the right thing in this instance would be $50,000. So this is just something to think about as we kick off this chapter. What is ethics? A lot of times our ethics are embedded in how we are raised. We often have the same ethics and morals as our parents, but sometimes we change based on society. Understanding right and wrong. Moral standards are principles based on religious, cultural, or philosophical beliefs that can come from friends, family, ethnicity, religion, school, media, and personal role models or mentors. Your personal morals are a collection of these influences. Now, while we may adopt our families' or religions' or culture's beliefs and develop moral standards from that influence, it's also possible to reject these and base your ethical behavior on other experiences. Amish teenagers, for example. Shared similar standards become morals or values by which we try to live our lives. The intrinsic value is the good in and of itself and is pursued for that reason, happiness or health. Instrumental value is the pursuit of one value to reach another, money for what it can buy. Values conflict happens when you come upon a situation that is in direct conflict with your own values. The book uses this example. Lying is wrong, but what if you were lying to save the life of a loved one? Are there exceptions when this happens? Do you need disclaimers for your value system? This is what is known as the gray area of ethics. Doing the right thing is generally what people will say when you ask them what ethics means to them. But how do you define the right thing? What if they were put into a situation such as mentioned above, lying to save the life of a person? What would be the right thing? Personal integrity is when ethics are viewed externally by others based on the behavior of the individual. The book mentions comic book heroes, where these characters live life true to their moral standards, even at personal sacrifice, such as relationships. Odd choice, but I like that the book brings it down to a simplistic level. Ethical theories. Virtue ethics is living your life as to achieve an ideal. What kind of person do I want to be, and how do I get there? The problem is that that type of person you want to be may be in direct conflict with your societal value system. The book talks about Greeks valuing wisdom, courage, and justice, but Christians value faith, hope, and charity. Utilitarianism, the greater good. This theory is focused on the outcome of actions rather than the actions themselves. The greatest good for the greatest number of people. The problem with this approach is that it supports the ends justify the means mentality. There is no accountability for the actions taken as long as the outcome is positive. German philosopher Kant posed that there should be universal ethics where actions are done out of duty or obligation rather than based on the situation. Same action, every time, everywhere, regardless of extenuating circumstances. The problem here is at the opposite of the greater good in that you focus on abiding by the common principle and there is no accountability for the outcome of sticking to the guidelines. The book touches on this topic of stem cell research. If you value the human life above all else as a universal ethic, how can you sit back and watch people suffer from diseases that could potentially be cured through research using stem cells? Ethical relativism. So would you be able to live under one of the previous ethical theories, where your moral standards were set for you and you could not stray from those guidelines? That's why ethical relativism is the most practiced form of moral standards. Your society, personal opinions, and the circumstances of the moment allow you to define your ethical response to each situation. Ethical dilemmas. So we've talked about ethical theories, and a theory is a speculation. Most of your college career will be based on theory. This may happen, or that may happen. You do this and it results in that. Research over time generates theory. But at some point, all theory must be tested through application and action. This becomes applied ethics. Your ethics will be tested at some point in your business career. That's the purpose behind teaching business ethics, is to prepare you for the what-ifs that could come up in your business career. You have control over the factors that will influence your decision when your ethics are tested. You will most likely be tested when there is no obvious right or wrong, but rather a choice of right answers. This is an ethical dilemma. Resolving ethical dilemmas. Sometimes an ethical dilemma occurs after a wrong decision has been made. Then you have to make a decision which may already be challenging your moral standard, the lesser of two evils, so to speak. The decision becomes, as the book states, a decision that you can choose and be able to live with. While a full resolution may never be an option, the process for determining an acceptable outcome can be done in these three steps. Analyzing the consequences means asking who will be helped, who will be hurt, what are the benefits, what are the ramifications over the long run versus the short-term resolution. Analyzing the actions means asking if the actions are honest, fair, equal, and respectful. Are any of the actions in direct conflict with these standards? What actions are the least problematic? Making the decision can then be a little easier given that the pros and cons of both have been considered. Putting it into practice. Review exercise number 1 in the book gives you this scenario. You buy a candy bar at the store and pay the cashier with a $5 bill. You're given change as if you paid with a $20 bill. What do you do? So looking at this, the decision-making process, step 1, who's helped, who's hurt, and who benefits. For example, who's helped in this situation? Is anyone helped? You may say, I'm helped. I come out $15 ahead. But then who's hurt? Of course, you're not hurt. You're not losing any money. You're getting extra money. But let's look at the employee. He could lose his job if his drawer comes up short. He's hurt. Or the store's profits are hurt. Maybe it's a small mom and pop store that really can't afford to lose that kind of money every time a mistake is made. What are the benefits in this situation? Are there any? Step 2 of the analysis is keeping the money and not telling the cashier, taking it back or returning the money. Is it honest? Is it fair? Is it equal, respectful? Is it a violation of your standards? What's the least problematic scenario here? And then step 3, based on the analysis of step 1 and 2, what will you do? Will you return the money? Will you at least let the cashier know? Or will you keep the money and if he loses his job, say, so what? If the 3-step model is too simple, how about an 8-step model? Wrong facts can equal wrong choice. You gave $5, the cashier thinks you just gave 20. He didn't keep the money on the till to remind himself. Just because you don't have all the facts doesn't mean you can ignore them. Make a reasonable assumption. The cashier, he was distracted. Maybe he's not so good at math. Have you always been? Maybe it's his first day. Facts are just facts. You must interpret the meaning of them based on the values that are important to you. An error was made due to one of the facts or assumptions. Perspective is huge. Walk in another person's shoes. See it from their viewpoint. What if you were the cashier? Would you want the customer to come clean? Consequences. What happens in each scenario? You pocket 15 extra bucks. The cashier gets fired and or has to pay out of his pocket. You leave the store with the correct change and a candy bar and peace of mind. The cashier remembers you as an honest person. Feelings? Can you take the money and leave the store with no guilt? Can you think about the end of the cashier's shift without feeling bad for him? Would you like to have that feeling of doing something good? Conscience and the angel and devil on the shoulder. Can you live with yourself if you choose to keep the money? Would you prefer to know that you made the right decision and believe for yourself that you are a good person? Justification. Go tell your buddy, "Hey dude, I just scored $15 from a dumb cashier." Your friend is appalled and tells you to take the money back. Can you justify keeping it then? Ethical reasoning comes from looking at the available information from an ethical dilemma and drawing conclusions based on that information that relates to our own moral standards. Kohlberg's stages of ethical reasoning are in your book, and it is made up of 6 stages in 3 levels. Pre-conventional is the lowest level of moral development and is directly related to punishment or reward. Obedience or punishment, nobody wants to be punished, so we'll believe something is right or wrong based on what an authority figure tells us. Individualism, instrumentalism, and exchange. A person is focused on his or her own needs, so something is right or wrong based on what I want or need. Conventional is where we become more aware of influences outside our immediate family or group. Good boy, nice girl. Something is right or wrong because it pleases and meets the expectations of family members. Law and order. Something is right or wrong because legal, religious, or social behavior dictates that it is, often due to one's status in society, a need to belong. Post-conventional is the highest level of reasoning and is truly based on moral standards rather than satisfying a group position. Social contract is something that is right or wrong because it has passed muster by the society that accepts the principle. Principled conscience, something is right or wrong because it truly reflects the person's individual value system and the choices they make. Kohlberg asserts that this is a very rare stage and that very few people reach this stage. That concludes the lecture for Chapter 1.